It's part 2. On to the Xbox 360, Naruto Rise of a Ninja. Back when this game came out, there was Naruto exclusives on every console, as Namco Bandai was trying to see which Naruto series would stick. Eventually, we know that they would end up sticking with the Ninja Storm series, which went on to have 4 games, and this series, Naruto Rise of a Ninja and The Broken Bond, only had 2 games in the series, but it definitely gave Ninja Storm a run for its money. The best part about Rise of a Ninja is the village itself. The village just feels like it was made for Naruto to run around and slide on power lines, walk on water, you name it. It's made for him to play around. And if you end up playing this game, that is definitely what you'll be spending a lot of time doing, is just running around the village, much like you would web sling around New York City in SpiderMan, sometimes mindlessly. Considering the stories are very much the same, I'm pretty sure that the main reason Ninja Storm took off and this series didn't is the gameplay. I honestly can't say the fighting in this game is good, although I do remember it being better in the sequel, but that's a video for another day. Another area that I think Ninja Storm beat it in is things like minigames. While the first Ninja Storm game did have some stupid things that you could do on the side outside of the story, this game does as well, and then the sequel didn't really change that a whole lot, but Ninja Storm sacrificed a lot of things like the open map for better gameplay and better storytelling elements. And when I say open map, I mean like how you can kind of just walk around the village or run around it and there's things to do. Ninja Storm kind of took a transition kind of way where you can walk to one section of the village and then you can walk to another section and then you can walk to a section outside. But the Rise of a Ninja and Broken Bond games, you could freely roam around, much like a Grand Theft Auto sandbox type of thing. That being said, this is one of the most underrated Naruto games, honestly anime games, I've ever played. There's some jankness factor to it nowadays, but I do remember Broken Bond being better, so I highly recommend anybody who's a fan of Naruto, and honestly even a fan of video games, try this out. I think you might like it. Still not quite as amazing as I remembered it, but definitely worth my time this year. I had a lot of fun with Rise of a Ninja, and I can't wait to play the sequel again. Game number 9, Phantom Breakers Battlegrounds. So this is a game I ran into back whenever the fuck this came out, 2013 on the Xbox Live Arcade, but I had only ever played the demo. So when I went to hook up my Xbox 360 to play Rise of a Ninja and saw that I still had the demo, I decided, hey, I might as well buy this game. It always gave me Scott Pilgrim vibes, and I'm a big fan of anything that's Japanese, so I tried it out. I like the pixel art and the music, but it's definitely not the most complex beat-em-up I've ever played. You can honestly just spam the shit out of your abilities, specifically A and down, and you win. You might lose a few times, but once you level up enough, you can pretty much do this and you'll be fine with the exception of a few bosses, maybe. That being said, I still had a fun time with this game. Every character plays differently, and there's a few to unlock outside of the first 4, plus there's 2 DLC characters. It's also co-op, but you need something called Friends, and I couldn't find that on the DLC list. I don't know if that's delisted, so since I don't have any friends, I just played solo. There's also an updated version for the PS4 and Switch, but I didn't know that until after I had already bought this. If you're a fan of Guardian Heroes or Scott Pilgrim, I'd definitely check this one out. Also, I found out that it's based on a fighting game series in Japan called Phantom Breakers, and a new one is coming out in 2021, but worldwide. So I'll definitely check that out because I love fighting games. The third and final Xbox 360 game on the list, Crackdown. Crackdown can be a bit of a mess, but it's a fun mess, especially in co-op. Many people remember this game for having the beta to Halo 3 come with it. The series still lives on to a mixed reception, with Crackdown 2 and 3 being one of the few Xbox exclusive IPs, but some people question if the series was ever even good. Or if the game sales were just boosted because everybody wanted to play the Halo 3 beta. So is Crackdown 1 any good? Well, it's fun. Objectively speaking, it has a wonkiness factor that can make the game unbearable. I almost gave up when I had to climb this giant tower to fight a guy named Wang. Also, there are many glitches plaguing the game, but overall, grabbing a co-op partner and killing every gang boss in the game will lead to a good time. I must say though, compared to games like Saints Row, which were out around the same time, this game doesn't hold up as well. That being said, I think if you have a buddy, it's a pretty short, quick playthrough that I do recommend for a few hours of fun. Game number 10, Shantae and the Pirates Cursed, originally a 3DS game, but now on the Xbox One. I have a lot that I could say about this one. This was my favorite new series to discover this year. I got addicted to this game. I 100%ed everything, including achievements. I love everything about it. The characters, the art, music, gameplay, you name it. It's such a great game that it got me excited to remember that there's 4 other games in this series that I haven't played yet. Limited Run Games actually released every single Shantae game physically this year, but unfortunately Pirates Curse was one of the 2 that came out when I didn't have any money, so I missed out on the collector's edition and even just the standard edition of that. So now it's being scalped to shit online. So unfortunately, if you're a fan of physical media, some of the Shantae games, not all, but some, are going to be kind of difficult to find. I ended up playing this through Xbox Live Gold because they gave it out for free earlier this year. So I guess the important thing is that I did get to play this game, and I beat it 5 times. Part of that is because there are achievements for speedrunning the game, 2 of them specifically. One for beating the game in 2 hours, and one for beating the game 100% in 3 hours. Then there's an achievement for collecting every single heart squid, but never using them to increase your health. This series is going to need its own set of videos one day, but for now, I am all in. I understand why people want Shantae and Smash now. By the way, Shantae for Smash. I want merchandise and everything. Shantae kicks ass. Game number 11, Spyro 3 Reignited on the Xbox One. The original Spyro the Dragon trilogy are some of my all-time favorite video games. I grew up with all 3 on my original PlayStation as a kid, and man, when they announced a remake of the originals, I was a little emotional. I used to play these games with my dad all the time, and they are some of the first games I ever 100% on my own. They might actually be the first games I ever 100% on my own. I did beat the first 2 last year, but whenever I tell myself I'm going to go back and 100% all the Spyros again, I always seem to get to 3 and stop. I ended up doing the same thing with Reignited, and I think it's just because it's such a long journey to get through all 3 in one go and my undying need to feel like I have to 100% everything that creates that. So this time, after 100%ing 1 and 2, I made 3 a priority in 2020 to make sure that I beat it and left no stone left unturned. I have such fond memories of the skateboarding section, and I love the redesign of Bianca in this game. The extra characters levels are also much better now, especially Agent 9, who got a huge upgrade. I think it's been said in most people's reviews, but the only unfortunate side to Spyro 3 and Reignited is the rushed development seen in later parts of the game. Much like Shantae, I'll have to go into more detail about these games sometime, maybe even full-fledged reviews, but right now we can only keep our fingers crossed and hope Spyro 4 is on the way. Game 12, Streets of Rage 4 on Xbox One. Okay, first off, the last Xbox One game on the list. Second off, I actually did buy this on PS4, but I bought it through Limited Run, so I don't have my copy yet, so I ended up playing this game on Xbox Game Pass. Streets of Rage 4 was one of the best surprise games for me this year. I figured it would be good, but damn, it's one of the best games that came out in 2020. I am a big Sega fan and Streets of Rage fan, so when they announced a 4, I was taken by surprise, skeptical, but happy. I've actually streamed Streets of Rage 1 through 3, and eventually streamed 4 as well, so viewers of my stream probably know how much I love this game. The artwork inspires me, I love the music, and of course the old characters, but the new ones as well. It's a simple story, no bullshit, you hop into the game really fast, and it's just balls to the wall, ass-kicking gameplay. One of my highest recommendations for the year and years to come. Now please, Dotemu, it's time to take on this one. Game number 13 for the 3DS, Mega Man 1 from the Mega Man Anniversary Collection. As I mentioned earlier, a derecho or inland hurricane hit Iowa earlier this year. We lost power for days, so when you can't play your main consoles, there's only one place to go, handhelds. Out of all the 3DS and DS games I need to beat, Custom Robo Arena, Pokemon Ultra Moon, Fire Emblem Conquest, etc., I chose to go to a series that I never felt I gave the attention it deserved, Mega Man, and what better place to start than with Mega Man 1? I bought the Anniversary Collection on day 1 years ago and still never played this fine series, but let me tell you, I had so much fun with this game that I almost beat it in one sitting. In fact, I would've if the final boss rush wasn't so dang difficult. Much like Castlevania, Mega Man still has some of that old school NES bullshit difficulty at spots in what was probably an attempt to make a short game much longer. These final bosses took me so many tries. It probably would have been easier if I knew the weaknesses to the main bosses because I was trying not to use a guide, but nonetheless I did it. I'm pretty happy with this one and I can't wait to play Mega Man 2. The only real downside to it at all was some of the frame rate issues in some of the levels, but I assume that has to do with the emulation, although I have heard that was in the original games like that as well. Heading on over to the PS4, we have Spider-Man on the PS4. I don't love this game like many people do, but I do like it. It's one of the hottest games on the PS4, so there are good reasons for that. I initially did 100% of everything in the game. That was my first playthrough. My second playthrough, I only did the story, and I did it on the hardest difficulty. So my first playthrough was somewhat negative. It was kind of a mix. It was about 50% positive things, 50% negative. So after doing a second playthrough where I only did the story, my perception was much more positive. And here's why. I believe the main reason for that is because anything involving the combat is fun, even if we've seen it before in other games like the Arkham games. Anything involving, well, not the combat, not so much. The story is very simple, but it's good enough to make you want to see what happens in the next cutscene, to make you want to see what happens in the next part of the game, to keep you going, so that's good. And like I said, the combat is really good. But anything outside of those are from meh to worse. Catching birds, collecting backpacks, the side missions, Harry's missions, oh god. Really, anything that doesn't involve combat or the story is probably not that interesting. It's not necessarily awful, except some of the side missions in Harry's missions are boring as fuck, but they're just not very fun. Speaking of missions, the story missions are fun, but the worst part of the story missions, and potentially the worst part of the game, are the Miles Morales and Mary Jane sneaking around missions. Man, those are tedious and really fucking boring. Now on the opposite end of that, the strongholds might be the best part of the game, but you gotta remember, that's also the part that involves the most combat, which is more of what I dug about Spider-Man. Make no mistake, I do like this game. I'm really excited to play Miles Morales. But it's not worth 100%. But I did. Every fucking trophy, even the DLC, which also has a good story, by the way. But I had to get through a lot of fucking horrible lab circuit, lab spectrograph puzzles to do it. Seriously, these might be worse than the sneaking missions. You're just wanting to do some combat stuff or whatever you're wanting to do, and all of a sudden something that looks like this pops up in your game and you're like, Jesus, they are all over the fucking game. They're not hard, but damn, they're annoying and they're not fun at all. Every time I saw one of these pop up, I was like, oh my god, let's just get through this. Jeez. It almost makes me wish this whole game was linear, but that's a conversation for another day. I know I shat on it a bit, but it is a really good game. You should play it. I didn't give it the best review here, but once again, these aren't reviews. They're just some of my thoughts thinking about these games and my experience with them at the time. Game 15, Persona 4 Dancing All Night, specifically the PlayStation Vita version. This is the second game that I decided to play during the power outage because my 3DS was dying and I don't have a lot of Vita games to choose from. However, I did not beat the main story, as I did that years ago. I 100% got all the trophies. Oh, and I don't care what anyone says, the Persona dancing games are great. Even if the controls are awkward at first, you will master the game and get used to them. And you know what? I actually like the story in this game better than Q. I remember when I played the story, I was very surprised at how good it actually was. Conceptually, it was a little silly, dancing to get rid of shadows and all that, but it works, and the new character, Kanami Mashita, isn't just a uwu anime girl. She's actually very normal and likable. It's actually kinda dark, revolving around an idol who ended up committing suicide. That's not to say that the dancing games weren't made to milk the franchise and basically be fan service, but if they're good, why do I give a shit? It was nice to go back and 100% the trophies on Vita, but maybe I should go back and play the PS4 version, that way I can go through the story and, well, I guess 100% the trophies again, because it's acted as its own separate game on PlayStation's trophy list. That way in the future, I can give you guys more details and understanding as to why I like the story so much. Or maybe I play it and change my opinion a little bit. Hopefully not, because I remember really liking the story, but let's move on. Moving on to PS4 and finishing up the Persona games on the list, Persona 3 Dancing in Moonlight and Persona 5 Dancing in Starlight. I decided to put both of them as the next game in one because they're basically the same thing and they came out together. And for the record, I did not plan on platinuming or even playing all 3 dancing games in 1 year. I was just going to play these 2 because they kind of felt like one thing. I did platinum both of them. The only reason I played Persona 4 Dancing again is because of that Duratio. The gameplay here does have improvements from 4, but mostly it's the same thing. They're very minor, non-noticeable gameplay things that you either have to look up or pay really close attention to. It's nice to give the songs from 3 and 5 their own remixes and whatnot, and to be able to see more into the lives of the characters from those games. There's no story mode in these ones, but instead social links that show us various cutscenes that are fun, but obviously not super serious considering there's little development for them. You do get to see their bedrooms though, because the characters just keep leaving you in them for no reason to explore. But it's neat to see the lifestyle they have, and it really shows the personality of the characters. I guess I can't recommend the dancing games to most gamers, but if you enjoy the music in the Persona games, I'd say check them out. I love the music in these games so much that I bought the soundtrack for all 3 of them. I'll recommend one song from each game. Backside of TV from Persona 4 Dancing, the Burn My Dread remix that Mitsuru dances to, specifically that one, and Rivers in the Desert that Ann dances to in Persona 5. One song that I absolutely hate from all 3 of these games is the song Shadow World by Day Mouse from Persona 4 Dancing. I do not know what the fuck I'm listening to there, but damn, it's not good. Luckily, and don't quote me on this, I think that song might have been free DLC, so that might explain something. Moving on to, yes, the PS5 Astros Playroom. Now, spoiler alert, as I know many of you might not have PS5s, you might want to skip this part of the video if you haven't played this game yet. This is one of the best free games I've ever played. You play as Astro, exploring the inside of your PS5, going through a cooling system, the GPU, the SSD drive, and the memory. It's a simple game with simple platforming, but so effective in showing you what your PS5 controller is capable of. If you consider this a console tech demo, it might be the best console tech demo that has ever been created. This game is a great introduction to a next-gen console, and it has so many references to PlayStation history. When you collect artifacts, it has references to video games, and there's logos everywhere. One of my favorite parts is when you beat a level and it plays the music and shows the startup screens to the consoles represented in that level. The PlayStation 1 startup screen part damn near brought tears to my eyes when the game played its intro. I was half expecting the Spyro 1 theme to start playing right after. The final boss is also a really amazing reference if you understand that reference. There's also a room to show off all the artifacts in the game that you've collected so far, and it's amazing. For many of you at this moment, you don't have a PS5, but when and if you do eventually get one, don't sleep on Astros Playroom. It'll be worth your time, I promise. Plus, it's free, so you have no excuse. Well, guys, that's it. That's every game I beat in 2020. Were there any games you were excited to see pop up on this list? And let me know what games you guys beat in 2020. Also, let me know some recommendations for me to play in 2021 or 2022. I might not get to them, but I can certainly check them out. I'm hoping to see y'all next year for my 2021 video on the games that I beat in 2021. See you then.